Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dune Book Club. I am very excited, as I'm sure you know. Here's the thing. I've been trying to get people to read this book for like over a decade, and it takes the oncoming new film. So thank you for making this movie, people, so that everyone's now on board and reading the book. Very excited. Cool. Yeah, we're here. We're doing it.
Yeah, doing it.
Hey, Mezimonti, thank you for the sub. And I'm glad Mezimonti is here. She's a much better digester of material than I am. This is going to be pretty freeform. I've never actually led a book club before. I really didn't expect it to take off, so we're just going to talk about it. So as of right now, so at this starting point, if any of you are here and not sure what's going on, we've read chapters 1 through 10. Which are pretty short. The chapters are short, so if you'd like to catch up, by next week we're going to be discussing everything from chapters 1 through 15. We'll continue to add 5 chapters as we continue to get through this book. And who knows, if we like it, we might continue the series. Corey says, yay, no plan. It says, it's my lunch break. I can hang out a bit. All right, well, let's talk about, I guess, let's do some general questions, I guess. I had to Google book club questions. I'm going to be completely transparent. So far, what do you like best of all the things that you've been presented with in this book? And this is open to everybody in the chat as well. We'll read everything that you say, and we'll keep everybody hooked in. So let's start with you guys, 'cause you're here.
I definitely am very appreciative of the just like matter of fact stating of everything. There, it is like a world lens of like there is no like person to focus on. It is like there's a family and things are all happening around them, and we're just kind of getting the view of everything happening without any real direction or attempt at saying like these are the good people, these are the bad people. It's just like this is what is happening, and you get to make your decision.
That's true. Yeah, the narrator is very unbiased in this book. I think we as readers are definitely picking sides, and I think fairly easily the way certain characters are painted. But that could just be me. I don't know. I'm not gonna tell people what to think. About you, Art?
I'm kind of enjoying how quickly I feel like I got to know characters. Like I got to kind of understand them and figure out like how they feel, who they are, pretty quick. The first time I tried reading this like 2 months ago, and I was like, for some reason I did not get it, and I'm not rereading it again. Everything clicked really easily, and I really enjoy the characters, and I got to like them pretty early on.
Nice.
Enjoying that.
So real quick, Mez wants to know what happened in chapter 10, just so that she knows where we are, because there are no chapter numbers, as I'm sure you all have discovered.
I just read it. I want to recap.
Yeah.
So basically what happened was Paul, so obviously spoilers if you are watching this, you know, we've done the first 10 chapters, so this is the review of that. So Paul was taking a nap after being trained by Dr. Yui for his Mentat kind of rigorous training that he's now going through. And he was asleep on a bed that they haven't really assigned rooms yet. It was more just like, hey, whatever looks pretty to you, and this room was very attractive to him because of the way it was designed. And it turns out that as he was sleeping, a hunter-seeker came out of the headboard of the bed and attempted to end his life, but he was so well trained in assassinations and how to maintain yourself that he was able to stop it and alerted the guards to a assassination attempt. And they also then found the green room at the top of the tower.
Yes. Yes. Oh, thanks, Tyron. I worked hard. Amber says she likes Paul and Jessica. They're interesting and relatable. I agree with that. And everybody seems to be enjoying Paul. Yeah, I think Paul gets a lot of attention, I think for obvious reasons, but I think that they do, and what Art was talking about, I think, is this sort of like third person omniscient, but also inside the characters' heads really immediately lets you delve into their motivations, their perspectives. because and it does it in such a rounded way where it's like you have a conversation between two people and you're following the surface conversation, but then you're also following their reactions to that conversation and their actual meant intentions. And I think it starts to get the heaviest in that chapter with Dr. Yui and Jessica, because Yui knows he's about to betray the family in some capacity, and him trying to hide that while still telling the truth, because he knows that a Bene Gesserit is essentially a truth seer. So he even starts the conversation in a pseudo-deceptive way so that she will think differently about what's happening. So that whole politeness stumble that by her calling her Jessica instead of my lady was a strategy move. And on the surface, and this is why stuff like this is why I feel that this book is going to be so hard for anybody to film, is because we're only going to see that surface thing unless they're going to give us that internal monologue, or the actors are just fucking tremendous, which, I mean, the cast is great.
Yeah, great.
The cast was also pretty great in the first film, too, but again, Lynchian weirdness. Yeah.
And Mezzi, time to be getting to the young master to his father. There was talk of having him relay this message basically to his father in person instead of by message. So that is part of it. And they also just just saw signaling happening across the basin from some device out in the field, so they think that a Harkonnen agent is about.
Yes.
Would you, Danny? Would you mind giving us kind of like an overview of what's happened so far to make sure that we all understood the same things?
Absolutely. Let me find. Oh, geez, I had a little beautiful list. Find it.
That might be a good way to start, just to recap and go, oh, okay, I did understand that correctly. I did not,
Yeah. Sorry, I just didn't want to skip anything. I had it. Bummer. All right, hold on. Sorry. No. Okay, well, so here's the basic broad strokes without going into great detail. So Duke Leto Atreides of the House Atreides, they are from a planet called Caladan, or they've been at least ruling this planet for a very long time. Home planet, full of water, full of luxuries. He is a popular leader in the Landsraad, which is basically the collection of great houses. So basically think of all of them as like lords and ladies in a vast kingdom. The kingdom here just happens to be, galactic wide or universally wide. So he has been, because he is popular, and we discover these details a little bit later in chapter like 9, 10-ish. I think it's chapter 9 when Paul and Leto are speaking to each other. And Leto kind of spells out why he has to walk into this thing that is most definitely a trap, is that Leto's popularity is a threat to the Emperor Shaddam IV. Now, the Emperor Shaddam IV is in charge of the Landsraad. He calls the shots in all of basically the entire universe. And important note, there are no real aliens in this universe. Everything is either human or human built or human affected. So that's an important note. Worms have been mentioned, but that's different. So basically, the Emperor is threatened by Leto's popularity, and in order to sort of either humble him or remove him, he gives him basically a honey trap. He's like, I'm going to give you Arrakis, which is the center of all power in this universe, because it is the only place where spice.
Oh,
it is a. What happened?
You broke up.
You cut out for a second.
Am I back?
Yeah.
I think I accidentally hopped on Wi-Fi. Let me turn that off. Okay. Where did I break up?
The center of.
Okay, so Arrakis is the proper name for Dune. So Dune, Arrakis, desert planet. You'll hear that a lot while you're reading it. There's lots of repetition in this book to really hammer in what's important, which is a kindness, I think, in such a complicated world building and multitude of characters sort of situation. But yeah, so the Emperor Shaddam IV gives a honeypot to Duke Leto by saying, hey, look, I'm going to give you Arrakis. Arrakis is the center of all wealth in the galaxy. Spice is the most valuable thing, period. Entire houses are built upon it. Exchange is built upon it. Space travel is possible because of it. It elongates your life. It increases your health. Then the native people to Arrakis, I use native loosely because they were at one point, human immigrators. They have taken so much of the spice that their eyes are blue on blue, solid. So there's no whites. And it's described as very dark. I think almost every iteration of adaptation I've seen, they're bright and almost glowing. But the way they're described in the book is that they're very dark and deep blue eyes, like completely stained across. So anyway, currently, the Harkonnens are in charge of Arrakis, and they have been stockpiling and siloing spice. And the idea is they can engage, all the great houses are basically allowed to engage in war, but small scale war. They're allowed to battle amongst themselves, but they have to be very careful about it. If they use atomics, which are big and obvious, then the emperor would have to step in and be like, oh, no, that's not okay. But if there's, say, a minor scuffle and some leader gets killed, oh, what a shame. The emperor can't really be held responsible. There's also a long-running blood feud between the Atreides and the Harkonnens, which is, the basis of all of this trouble. And the traitor, Dr. Yue, though we don't know what he's going to do yet, we know that he is caught in the middle of this feud, and his wife has been taken from him, and he is betraying his beloved house just to see if she's alive or not.
Who is this again?
Dr. Yue.
Is you? Okay.
Yeah. And there's lots of characters have sort of popped up, so we can talk through the characters real quick as well. I think that'll also help me kind of wrap my brain around story because I forget things. So in the House Atreides, we have Paul. Paul's our main character. He's 15 years old. He is potentially the Kwisatz Haderach, and we're not entirely sure what that is yet at this point in the book, but often mentioned in prophecies of the Bene Gesserit witches. Lady Jessica is a Bene Gesserit. We find out that she is not Paul's wife, but his concubine. He has taken no wife in order to leave himself open for potential political gain. He is also a distant relative of the Emperor Shaddam IV, which means that he could eventually maybe vie for power, which is another reason why the Emperor is threatened by his presence. Duke Leto Atreides is described as two very different people in one sort of vessel. He is extraordinarily warm and kind and sweet to Lady Jessica and his son, and basically most of his subjects. But as a leader, as a duke, he takes after his father, who is mostly referred to as the Old Duke. I believe he has a name, but I've already forgotten it. It's not too important. But basically, all of that hardness, that coldness comes from his own father, who is pictured in a portrait. And I love this sort of symbolism, right? So the portrait of the Old Duke is in a large, he's in a matador uniform or costume, and to be hung opposite of this portrait is the bull's head that took his life, with the blood still on it. It's been sprayed with a fixative, and that sort of reminder of just like. They mention Jessica mentioned something like, well, this means something. Why did I unwrap these first? And it's not quite revealed yet, but I like that he just plants these seeds. He's like, it's symbolism, damn it. And you're just like, what? What does it mean? Someone said too many characters. There are quite a lot of characters.
Yeah. That took a second to kind of like settle in and who was what. And I mean, and it's like, it was kind of like reading Game of Thrones the first time. You're like, I have no idea who these people are. Until you get kind of comfortable with their names and where they.
Yeah, and if you have the book, the physical book, there in the back, there's a guide to the different houses, pronunciations, and all that sort of thing, and what certain terms mean. So that'll all be in the sort of like appendices section. Very helpful because one minor thing is if you go to the glossary of terms, know that you may accidentally spoil things for yourself. So only go searching for words that you actually need to know. If you go and read through that glossary, it can spoil things that happen much further down in the book. So that's kind of important. Menzi says, one fun thing in my most recent read was that this time around, I've done a lot more reading on Middle Eastern politics with regards to oil. It's not a perfect parallel, of course, but it's obviously not coincidental. It adds some more depth to the political intrigue. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Spice in this universe is an allegory to oil, and it's definitely not a one-for-one, but that's sort of like how this controls literally every economy, it's definitely a heavy nod to that.
You're right, Tigeron. Jessica is Paul's mom.
Yes. Yeah. Jessica is Paul's mom, but not Duke Leto's wife. She is his concubine. She is Paul's mother. She's a Bene Gesserit. And yeah, he never took to wife. And she sours a little bit at this thought when she mentions, when she's talking to Dr. Yui, I think, because it was, he married his Bene Gesserit wife. And she's like, well, he married his Bene Gesserit. She's got this little moment of just like, man. And
there's also a part in the green room where she sees a note from another Bene Gesserit, who was at that Arakeen.
It was her. It's not you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Right.
But yeah, so the Arakeen facility was home to another house at one point, and this greenhouse was left as a present, basically, as they left. And so the note that Jessica receives basically says, it says at the very end, it says Lady, whatever the other Bene Gesserit's name was, and that means to her, like, oh, she got married. And so she kind of like sours at that point.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So we've talked about Duke Leto a little bit. He's doomed, essentially, from the beginning, from the get-go. They tell you, like, Duke Leto is walking into a trap. He knows he's walking into a trap, but he's approaching this in the smartest way. He's like, well, I can't let them know that I know that I'm walking into a trap. Like, they say this often in this book, which is plans within plans within plans. So he's trying to outthink this trap. But he also, you can feel that he has also kind of got that weight on his shoulders. You can tell he's feeling sorry for his son, because he's probably like, this is probably going to be your problem pretty soon. But he's still, holding his head high and still commanding all of these people. And he is beloved, which is not something that you see in a lot of these other characters of the other houses, specifically the Harkonnens. They're all power and fear and greed and all that stuff. And you get the sense of that from their only chapter at the beginning, right? You only see the Beast Raban, or sorry, not Beast Raban, the Baron in the one chapter. Do we see him again?
I think he was only seen in one chapter.
Cool. The Baron Harkonnen.
We just get that one chapter of him.
And Fade. But yeah, you get the idea of them just being like, their entire existence is conniving and awful. You also find out that unlike the other great houses who were sort of put in charge via bloodlines, the Harkonnens were given power by the Chom Company, which is just like, they are essentially like a giant mercantile thing.
East India Trading Company.
Yeah, exactly. They're just fucking huge. They control everything. They set prices for stuff. And so whoever they deem has power, and they're new money. They're and that's the Harkonnens. OPEC, says Mizzy. Yeah, basically, yes. And then we have, the Lady Jessica. So she is a Bene Gesserit. We've seen her use something called the Voice. Or no, she doesn't use it on him.
Only the Reverend Mother.
Yeah, the Reverend Mother, Gaius Helen Mohaim. Names. So she uses the Voice, and this is a Bene Gesserit training tool, which basically is like through specific intonations, they can command your body, because your brain will respond faster than you can react to it. And you will get this in a little bit more detail, but you see it in action. So that's just breaking that down a little bit more.
In fact, Jessica even goes on to say, like, she won't use it against her Duke.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that would be messed up. She's kind of like, if to connect it to a recent character, the Voice functions very similarly to, Rumor in Umbrella Academy. Not quite so extravagant or ridiculous, but there are some moments like that. So very, very Jedi mind trick. We also have Thufir Hawat, who is he's a Mentat, and the Mentats are human computers. They're calculating machines, and I believe he is the Master of Assassins to House Atreides. And you find out also that Paul is like kind of chosen for so many paths without his knowledge. And it's just like, how does he handle it? So Jessica gets chided by the Reverend Mother because she had a son. And the Bene Gesserit witches are meant to only have more daughters to make more Bene Gesserit witches. The idea that she made a son means that she was hoping, and she believes, that her child could be the Kwisatz Haderach. And what that means, we don't know yet by chapter 10. but we do know that the gall of this action has offended Reverend Mother Helen Gaius Moham. But we'll get to her in a second because I fucking love her. I love her. And that we Thufir Hawat is a Mentat. They're recognized by they have a tattoo on their head, a diamond-shaped tattoo.
No,
and they also have Yue. Oh fuck.
That's the royal. The
Mentats. Sorry, they have the purple lips from the shit that they drink. Yeah. Purple lips and a mustache.
And what makes them a mentat? Like, how do they become?
It's like crazy training and breeding. So breeding is a huge thing. There's a weird eugenics undertone to all of Dune, which is kind of gross, but it's also gross on purpose. So it's also sort of a commentary on that whole idea. Okay. This first book, this is why I think it's necessary to read the series. This first book is absolutely set up as like a hero's journey, but the epic as a full story arc is not, and that's an important note. Basically, it takes the piss out of a lot of stories like this, which is something that I really like, and it does it in a very intelligent way. But yeah, so Ms. Crystal says, the Reverend Mother also cites that an Atreides daughter could have helped fix the Harkonnen blood feud problem. At least that's what she says. Keep that in mind, Miss Priscilla. That's a good thought. Let me see. That character isn't here yet. So Thufir is around. He hasn't done much yet. He's basically training. He's now training Paul in the ways of the Mentat. So yeah, again, human computers. It's all about breeding. It's all about just constant tests throughout their lifetime without them being aware until it's time to make them aware, which is what just happened to Paul.
Yeah.
I love that moment where he's just like, yeah, but you don't tell them until, oh shit. Like, oh, okay, you've been training. Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And the Reverend Mother was very impressed with Paul's reaction to the Gom Jabbar test. And the Gom Jabbar is that little poison needle, but also synonymous with the test itself, which is the test to see whether you are human or a beast. And that was always an interesting thing. It's like, if you have no control, you're just an animal to the Bene Gesserit. So it's like, they don't fuck around. And she pushed him harder than she would push anybody else, because she was also sort of infuriated by the sheer balls of him, because he's a little spunky for a kid. And so she's very impressed with him. And we have Gurney Halleck, who's one of my absolute favorite characters. I love Gurney. So he's a troubadour. He is a fighter. He plays the balistet and he sings. And he's just like, he's the sword master for Paul. So you meet him in a nice knife fight battle, because they all wear these belts that would prevent like lace gun fire. So they have laser guns, they have ballistics, they have atomics. These are the sort of weapons we're dealing with. But the thing is, you don't want to use a laser gun on somebody who's got the belt, because that'll make it explode. And most likely the person shooting will also die. So combat has resolved backward a little bit to knife fights, because it will stop a fast ballistic, these shields, but it won't stop something slow enough like a knife. So you have to basically work your speed. And so they're fighting while wearing these shields at the same time. So you get an idea of like how these sorts of fights work, which is pretty cool. And yeah, he's just like, he seems to be the only character with humor, which is also why I like Gurney so much. Everyone else is very fucking serious because they got a lot of shit to deal with. Mezzi says, it's so hard not to say anything about book 4 when talking about book 1. Everything is so well laid out for it here. Absolutely. Yes, no spoilers. No spoilers, but true. Yeah, and these all bleed into each other very well. We have Duncan Idaho, who we also don't get a lot of. We know that he is loyal. We know that he is a fierce fighter and proudly loyal to House Atreides. They say he's a graduate of the Ginaz School, and I've already forgotten that detail, so I don't remember why that's important. But he's a big, strong dude. He likes Paul. I don't think we've gotten a lot of time. We keep hearing about him going and doing things. So he went to the planet first to start kind of laying the groundwork for House Atreides before they arrive on Arrakis. Yeah. But you'll get to know Duncan a lot better in the future.
And then in the book they described as like, I don't remember exact wording, but someone along a guy who would be really good at getting people to trust him. Like he comes off as like a very moral guy and a very straightforward guy. And
yes, they gave characters titles. I loved that too. Actually, it was it's like there's this cute little moment where it's like, oh, you named them too, because it was like I think Gurney the Valorous, and it was Duncan the what was it?
I think it's something like the Moral or something like that.
Yeah, the Moral.
Well,
Yeah, and I love that. And it's something I like about this book is it's not afraid just to define shit for you, because I think he knows that you going in, it's like so much information. So it's like he defines, he builds and shapes these characters very clearly, very quickly, and he gives you that insight into their heads. So even though you see the betrayals coming, there's still a lot of hope, and there's a lot of like interesting, like, well, what could play next? Because all of these characters are super intelligent, so you never know like who is like at the top of this chess game. Like, it's hard to tell who's winning, even though we know everybody's moves and sleights within sleights. I love, especially on the second go around. I'm like, oh shit, oh yeah, oh cool, very cool stuff. We have, as he says, Herbert navigates that so well. Other authors try and fail. They tried and failed.
They tried and died.
House Harkonnen, we didn't get to know a lot of those characters yet, but we have Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. He's the head of House Harkonnen. He's a big, heavy dude. He has to wear suspensors to keep his bulk up. There are more details to that, but those are not revealed as well. We have Piter de Vries, who is a Mentat, but he's a little bastard. So we meet him in the meeting with him and Fade. He's a little piece of shit. But I also love Piter. He's a lot of fun because he's like, Harkonnen like is established as being like, this man should be absolutely terrifying, and Piter, no fear whatsoever for his own safety, because like, I know you need me, so I get to be a shit. And, and I love that about him. He's a great character. And then there's Fade Rautha, who is the beautiful young nephew of the Baron and heir presumptive. So he is potentially next in line. So the Baron is having him in on meetings to sort of train him in the ways.
And like on the subject of Piter, like I remember watching the original Dune movie, and that is not the character I got from that movie. Like,
really?
Yeah. Like, the book explains him being like a shit so much better than what I saw in the movie. Like, I just thought he was like breaking. Like, I thought he was a broken Mentat or something like that.
Oh no, he's a douche monkey. I have a completely different. I love Brad Dourif, and I thought he did a great job of making him just like super smarmy. But I think the problem was he was smarmy in a room full of smarmy, so he didn't stand out because they also heightened the other characters to a cartoonish degree. Like, their version of Baron Harkonnen was doing fucking front flips and shit on a floaty belt. Like, so there was no, the levels were all out of whack. I think that if Piter were left on his own, just his performance, I honestly think he, in my head anyway, I feel like he nailed that. Yes, Michi, this is my own painting from Perception Paints. That's my back.
Michi also says has not read anything.
Oh well, spoilers.
Well, this is more like preview to your 10 chapter journey.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like right now there isn't a whole lot of like huge spoilers to anything. You get like just to the chapters, but nothing huge.
And the first several chapters also do the thing which is amazing to me about this book. They tell you exactly what's going to happen. Like, they fucking just tell you at the start of each chapter, it was like this when this happened. And then they let you watch it unfold and kind of see. And it stays interesting, which it shouldn't, because shit like that would normally make me mad. But in this book, it works very, very well.
Mitchie also says, May, I don't plan to read. So I think she means for us to do all the hard work.
All right, that's fine.
Watch the show so we tell her what's going on.
Let's see, we have, or what Danny said. Sparkman. Excuse me. We haven't gotten to meet any of Shaddam's house yet. We only know him by name and by status. We have the Bene Gesserit, Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohem. She's fabulous. So she's a head of the order, if not the head of the order. That's what I can't remember. But she's very important. She Lady Jessica, when she was younger, used to be her handmaiden, basically. So when Paul gets all pissed, like, why are you talking to my mom like that? She's like, or no, why are you talking to my mom like a handmaiden? He's like, she was my handmaiden. Like, oh, right. Cool. But she's super fascinating too, because she's harsh, super harsh when she shows up. But then in private, especially with Jessica, she's got such a tender presence and such a care for Jessica and her future. It's like, it really is like she is a mother. She's got this very scolding tone. It's like, you fucked up, you stupid person. But I really want you to be okay and do your best. Try to survive. Your husband, or sorry, your lover is fucking doomed. But you do your best. And like she says it flatly too. She's like, there is no hope for Duke Leto, but maybe there's hope for the sun. And that kind of stuff is crazy. And it pisses off Paul so much too, which I love. And I think that's it for characters really that we've seen so far.
So coming back to Dr. Yue for a little bit, I have questions.
Yeah.
So just reading the book, and I'm sure. So what we're just supposed to, from what I had to go back and read because I missed some things and I had to go back and read this chapter. So we're assuming that he is somehow gonna betray them or attempting to betray them to find out about his wife. We don't know how or if he's gonna succeed, but that's the thing that's laid out for us. Like he's a betrayer.
Yes.
And even though he is on their side, he likes them. He loves them just because of his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and he hates himself for it. And that's why I love the internal monologue in this book, because I feel like otherwise you'd just be like, oh, what an asshole. But you're just like, oh, you poor bastard. And the only reason he's in the situation at all is because of the blood feud between the Harkonnens and the Atreides. So had the Atreides just fucking made nice, or the Harkonnens were capable of making nice, they wouldn't be in the situation. But feuds are feuds, and people are stupid. We've also now met the shout out Mapes, who I adore. Yeah. She's one of the weirdest characters. So she's the first Fremen that we actually meet in the book. So the Fremen are the people who live on Arrakis and have lived on Arrakis for a very, very long time. They've found ways to survive using caves and still suits. And still suits are an outfit that you wear that reclaims your body's water. We haven't seen one in person, but they have been described. And as to the opulence of the place, which is Arrakeen, which is the new home base of our Atreides family, they found an older building. The Harkonnens built their own sort of like utilitarian, brassy area that they stay in. Oh crap, I forgot where that is. Anyway, I should know. But so they're in Arrakeen, and the opulence of this place is crazy, right? So there's a scene where Yue is looking out the window at the Fremen walking by, looking at the 20 palm trees that are out front of Arrakeen. And some of them look at it with absolute hatred, and some of them look at it with absolute hope, because moisture is so rare here that they measure those trees as 400 men's worth of water. So for them to just have these trees, they're date palms, so they will eventually produce fruit, but not this season. So they're just super upset about it in one direction or the other. Either just like, oh, wow, look, if they can do that, then maybe they can bring us more. Or that could be feeding people, like that could be keeping people alive, and you're using it to show off, gardening. And the shout out Mapes mentions that she doesn't even have to wear her still suit in this castle. As well as when we find, when Lady Jessica finds that greenhouse, basically, that has a way of filtering the white sun of Arrakis into yellow light so that all these plants can grow. And there's even a fountain in this room. There's just moisture everywhere. And the shout out Mapes kind of stares at that door with such disdain because she clearly knows what's in it.
I like when the guard comes in and he keeps looking around, like he's talking to her and dealing with the business. He's talking to her, but he's also being distracted by, I think, maybe the fact that he'd never seen this room, and he's like keeps checking it out and being aware of it. Mm-hmm. They also talked about how they, speaking of that opulence, how they also didn't seal like the windows and doors for moisture. Mm-hmm. Like any other place would have special like seals to make sure that moisture didn't escape, but because this place doesn't really worry about it, they only sealed it for dust and like that might come out from outside, but they don't bother trying to keep the moisture in as hard as somebody else would.
Yeah. Oh, Amber says, I don't like that some people have names that are titles. It makes it quite confusing. Like, is that person a weapon or a food source or a group of people? Who knows? There are a lot of titles. There are a lot of weird names in this book. Shout out, we just read that. Her name has a meaning. It is a title.
Well Dipper.
Well Dipper, yeah. So Mapes is her name. Shout out is her title. I made highlights in some areas that I thought were worth talking about. But I have to go slowly because I have the wrong Kindle in my hands. Let's see, what else happened plot-wise? So yeah, we talked about Paul almost getting assassinated, according to plan. We know that there is a traitor, or at least the House Atreides is now aware that there may or may not be a traitor in their midst. Mm-hmm. And what I love is that Jessica and Paul have this moment going down the line of the most important people in their lives, and they immediately they dismiss Yue because they know he hates the Harkonnens as much or more than they do. So their trust in their friends is sort of their undoing, but they also can see like, hey, if I tell someone there's a traitor, then they're going to start hunting amongst themselves. So like, is it this sort of ploy or is it this sort of ploy? Do we believe this news or not? And yeah, again, more layers and layers and layers. And I love this book so much.
Can you talk about the thing that tried to kill him? Because I wasn't clear on what it was.
So the Hunter Seeker is basically, it's like a little floaty needle. It's got like an anti-grav device on it. They call it a suspensor, which makes it slippery and hard to grab. But the idea is it goes for nerve endings and then follows those nerve endings to vital organs, and it kills you. It just rips through your flesh.
Okay.
But it has to be remotely controlled. So there's somebody somewhere else, and they find him at some point. But yeah, there's somebody else like controlling this thing. But because of how small it is, its receptors, there's like a little snoot with a lens on it, but it can only really track movement. So he can't react. So since Paul is like, oh shit, something's happening, and he froze, that gave him enough time to spy the Seeker and make a plan. Had he moved, he would have been dead. So that, again, that control that the Lady Jessica and that Hawat have taught him continue to keep him alive. Option delete says, who's the gentleman on the bottom?
It's me.
That's Art.
Art. I work here.
He goes here. Yeah, so that's a Hunter Seeker, and yeah, they're scary. They're super scary, and Paul was able to overcome it quite easily because he's a well-trained little bugger. And I also love that like they mentioned that Gurney Halleck he's like every teacher ever, where he tells Duke Leto like how well he did in fighting class, and Paul's like, that's not what he told me.
Yeah.
He's not giving any praise to Paul.
Yeah. What about the ship and the way they traveled over here?
So they're on it was a big guild ship, right?
Highliner.
Highliner. So Highliner is massive. Like, so think like
Ships
in
and
terms
ships.
of scale, it's somewhere around like Star Destroyer status. It's monstrous.
I thought it
Because
was
it's
bigger than that.
It might be.
Because they mentioned that Harkonnens and Atreides ships could be inside it and still be safe from each other.
Yeah, they wouldn't even know they were there.
Yeah.
It's a huge carrier, and it's basically it's like you're transporting a world basically.
Yeah.
So it's got to be big enough to take all of that world's people to move folks around. So
And a part of the being safe too was the fact that they knew that even the Harkonnen wouldn't try because they wouldn't want to lose. They know that they would risk losing their travel privileges. So it is definitely one of those safe spaces because it's huge and safe, but it also people won't mess with it because they wouldn't want to lose that ability.
Yeah, the politics of murder in Dune are fantastic because you can't do it openly. Because if you do it openly, you will be punished by law. So you have to find very creative ways to take care of your enemies. So this is why Shaddam is like, I give you the gift of Arrakis. You're welcome. But the Harkonnens are there and they're waiting and they're already trying to murder people. Because, if Assassin kills somebody, it's really hard to prove like, oh, who was it? Right? So it's, an open battle is not the best thing. Leto mentions his own plan, which I also really like. So the Sardaukar are the super like elite troops of Shaddam IV, of the Emperor. And basically, if anybody steps out of line, that's who he sends. And they suspect that there are already Sardaukar on the planet that are just wearing Harkonnen regalia, like waiting to take out the Duke and all their people. So Leto's plan is they've overlooked the Fremen. The Fremen have managed to survive and thrive in vast like underground tunnels and all these things that the Harkonnens were just too lazy to go investigate. And if they're tough enough to survive this world, they're tough enough to be fighters. They're tough enough to be all these sorts of things. So his plan is to round up the Fremen and get them on his side. And Duncan Idaho has already started those motions by meeting with them. I think they mentioned Dr. Liet Kynes. We haven't met Liet Kynes yet. Who's a doctor who's been spending time here to look at the ecology and stuff like that. We have not talked about the Guild Navigators. They've been mentioned, and they've also been mentioned that they're banned from ever viewing them. So it's like that would also revoke your travel privileges by stepping in on a Guild Navigator doing their job.
Yeah, I think they only mentioned that he just makes a comment about how, they keep them secret because of how weird they are now, or they look because of mutations or whatever. And he's just assuming that that's why they keep him secret, but we didn't hear much beyond that.
Yeah, and that's one of those few moments where I feel like you get Paul's actual, like, you're reminded that he's a boy.
Yeah.
Because he's just excitedly curious about that. He's like, well, what if I just like sneak in? Like, oh, bam. Let's see. Tigron says, have you noticed repeating themes or sayings within the first 10 chapters? Like Paul's terrible purpose is mentioned many times. What do you think that could mean for the future? I can't say anything, but I will say something that I noticed this time that I didn't notice the first time is that Paul is aware of his terrible purpose. I did not catch that the first time reading the book, because initially it's sort of like this thing like, oh, it awoke Paul's terrible purpose. It awoke Paul's terrible purpose. And then I think around chapter 9, it's like, is this my terrible purpose? So he's consciously aware that he's meant for something terrible, and terrible by definition here could mean, you know, monstrously evil or just monstrous, right? So it can be, it could be kind of either side of the fence there. Option Delete says, wasn't assassination allowed according to the rules of house engagement? I can't remember the term for it. Yes, you're right. You are correct. Yeah. So assassination is fine because it's clean, quick, and easy. So yeah, like small scale murder, totally acceptable. But once you start throwing atomics and ruining landscapes and stuff like that, that's when you start to have issues with the Emperor. But yeah, Emperor's a dick. We know that much. We haven't met him, but we know he's a dick just because of his actions and what he's doing. He's threatened by Leto, so he's taken Leto out, and he's using the big muscle, which is the Harkonnens here. And they've been Jessica gives you a hint to their plan, which is they've been stockpiling spice this entire time. So they could basically, if something terrible happens to Arrakis or anything on Arrakis, they have this giant stockpile that they can then, you know, it's now way more valuable, right? So they get to inflate those prices. Terrible for the house or for everyone? That's a good question, Tigron. Let me see. What else is awesome? More
Basically,
questions.
just like if anything disturbs the houses, it creates chaos amongst the entire universe.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Let me see. We've talked about characters. So currently, on this current read, Jessica is my favorite character, and I really liked her on the first read as well. But I think first read I was already attached to Paul because I knew everything was about Paul. But I think Jessica to me is the most interesting character to read from chapter to chapter. She just becomes more and more complex. I feel like Paul has a longer way to go before he starts stepping into whatever he's meant for. And Leto's interesting, but we don't get enough time with him yet at this point. So currently my favorite is Jessica. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. She right now is the most complicated and the one that has the most for us currently. Although I did really, really like the Harkonnen Mentat. Like, he was my favorite so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, before like we got further into the 10 chapters, like at the 5 chapters, it was the Reverend Mother was my favorite character. But now Jessica is definitely as interesting in developing, because like we only got to see a little bit of the Reverend, and like that world that we get to only glimpse at of what the Bene Gesserit is, and so getting to see a little bit more of what that means through Jessica's eyes is cool.
Yes. Oh, another important note that happened in these chapters. So the Shoutout Mapes basically tested Jessica. She would have murdered her if she didn't answer the question correctly. And Jessica doesn't know how she answered correctly, which is a wonderful moment, right? So she holds up an item called a crysknife. And a crysknife is a weapon that is ground down from a sandworm's tooth. So these are very important in Dune. A fun detail of that is it always must be against flesh, or it must be quenched in blood before you sheath it, or it starts to disintegrate, which I thought was just a wonderful, just picturesque detail. So she holds it up. I'm just going to go to that moment because that moment is great. So she says, "It's a crysknife. Do you know its meaning?" And Jessica goes through like, she's like, "Okay, crysknife. What does crysknife mean?" So it means death maker. And so what she says, Jessica says, "It's a maker," and gets interrupted by the shout out Mapes celebrating that she got it correct, and that Jessica's like, she had intended to say the knife was a maker of death and then add the ancient word, but every sense warned her now. All the deep training of alertness that exposed meaning the most casual muscle twitch. The key word was maker. Maker? Maker. So she doesn't know how the fuck she got that right. And I love that so much. She's like, oh, I almost died. And I don't know why I'm alive. And the rest of that chapter is her just playing along, like being oh, that's the other thing. So the Bene Gesserit basically have missionaries that go from planet to planet and just spout off about how wise and brilliant and perfect the Bene Gesserit are. So this place has already been primed for her arrival, which is why, you know, the shout out is like, you're amazing, you're the best already, but still, I'm probably gonna have to kill you. And then everything's fine. And the shout out believes that she is the one. We don't know what that means yet either.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy. I love it. So also more I feel like more Star Wars things that inspired Star Wars are like the moisture evaporator type machines that are all over Arrakis. They collect moisture from the air, moisture from condensation. They mention wells. So anytime you try to drill a well on Arrakis, you get a few spurts of water and then it immediately gets plugged. And there's no explanation for that.
And like nobody's looking into it is what the thing was like. Oh, it's just what it is, and they just accepted.
Yep. So Dr. Liet Kynes is mentioned as an ecologist. So his arrival will hopefully bring more answers to those sorts of questions. But we haven't actually seen a lot of Arrakis. So basically, they've moved into the house, but they haven't gone out among the people yet. They haven't done anything big. We know that Paul was meant to be summoned out to his father, like out in Arrakis somewhere. But because of the assassination attempt, he's like, tell Dad I'm going to be late. I feel like that's the most of it. Let's see.
Backing up to the old lady trying to kill Jessica. Why was she going to kill her? We don't know. We just okay.
Yep. Yeah. And then she now owes Paul her life as well, or at least some of her life's water, and she's pissed about it, which is also great. She's like, great, okay, I have a life debt to this fucking kid, like this fucking rich, watery kid. I love how sour she is. She's a great character.
What's her name again? What's her name?
The shout out Mapes. Trying to see some other things. There's one thing I highlighted that I didn't catch the first time, and I feel like it's going to pay off. There's a talk with, oh crap, it might have been Hawat. Let me see. Gosh, I hope I highlighted it. It had to do with a knife. It's basically something about saying like, know the difference between using the tip and the edge. And it seemed like this very heavy moment, and I couldn't. Oh, I found the other highlight that I did, which is the perhaps being a mentat is my terrible purpose. It's Paul's internal monologue for himself. Okay, I found it. So it's a line from the Duke. So talking about, Paul says, Gurney says there's no artistry in killing with the tip, that it should be done with the edge. So this sort of like poetic version of killing, because he's a romantic. So the Duke says, Gurney's a romantic, the Duke growled. This talk of killing suddenly disturbed him, coming from his son. I'd sooner you never had to kill, but if the need arises, you do it how you can, tip or edge. And there's something, and before that it was, he says you have nicety of awareness, in his own words, of the difference between a blade's edge and its tip, which I think is meant to be sort of a playful, it's like, you know how a knife works. But the way that it's repeated feels like it is prescient in some way, and I want to see that moment pay off where he makes a choice between the tip of a knife or the edge of a knife. And it's been so long, I don't know if there is a payoff, but that, for whatever reason, stood out to me just as a piece of writing.
I can kind of get some of that semblance just from the fencing I've done, like, because foil is only tip piercing and supposed to be kind of like the elegant fencing, and then saber is like you have everything at your disposal and you just go, and it's just like way more aggressive, so it's like you get it done and you just do it. So I think maybe at least that's what I'm reading from that.
Yeah, it could be. It could just be that. Amber says the knife is a metaphor for honor and tradition, I'm assuming. I could totally see that. The edge would be the tradition and honor, and the tip would just be like, die. Yeah, I like that too. To sort of hammer in Leto's plan. What's this?
Hey, 50th Street Studio says, hello, I'm not interested in Dune, but a lot of my followers are. I will post the link. Thank you.
Fabulous, thank you. Yeah, this is our first Dune chat. We've read through chapters 10 currently.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll be continuing every week. We'll be 5 chapters further.
And these will end up on YouTube too. So if they want to catch up backwards and hear, because 1 through 10 is this episode and we'll continue, they can catch up there as well on YouTube. But thank you, appreciate it.
This is Leto's. This is Leto talking about the Sardaukar, actually. So this thank you, 50th Street Studio. So this is talking about the Sardaukar and sort of where they come from, which isn't directly answered. It's like, where do you suppose they come from? Blah, 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 blah. Prison planet. Seems like a cover. Something's weird with the Sardaukar. Yeah. So Paul says, but every report on Seleucus Secundus says SS is a hell world. Leto says, undoubtedly. But if you're going to raise tough, strong, ferocious men, what environmental conditions would you impose on them? He says, how could you win the loyalty of such men? He says, there are proven ways. Play on the certain knowledge of their superiority, the mystique of secret covenant, the esprit of shared suffering. It can be done. It has been done on many worlds and many times. And shit like this is why I love Dune. Because it calls out like every strategy and it shies away from none of them. So it reuses, like they talk about religious zealotry. They talk about just like political stuff, total gaslighting of like entire peoples and all this stuff just to get what you need as a leader, regardless of morality. It's like, this is how you control people. And yeah, it's like it's all a matter of style and approach, and each house sort of has their own different style and approach. Leto chooses love, honor, respect. The Harkonnens choose power, intimidation, greed, and both are incredibly effective. And all of it is, I just think all of it is commentary in the best way, because it doesn't shy away, it pulls no punches, because even the things that are seemingly good are still just to get what they want. So even from the Duke, like as much as we love the Duke as a man, as a person, as a leader, even though he's beloved, he's still this harsh ass leader guy. Which is, I don't know. I love that shit. Let's find some more questions. Let's see. Do any of you in the chat have things that stood out to you, particular moments, like my little Oh, never mind. The email keeps popping up on top of things, and I thought something close.
I looked down at the chat, and you yelled, and it scared me.
I like this question. What feelings does this book evoke for you?
Feelings.
Curiosity?
There's no wrong answer.
I don't know if I have any feelings about it yet.
It's not particularly emotional at this point.
Yeah.
It is very matter of fact. I think I feel a sort of creeping dread by around chapter 10, because the more I get to know these characters, the less I want to see the things they have told me are going to play out. Because at the top of each chapter basically levels down in a sort of like historical book aspect, and then this happened. You're like, oh shit.
Maybe there's a little bit of like Game of Thrones trauma where you get to know all these characters and you don't know what's going to happen to who. So there's a little bit of like, I was like, I'm getting to enjoy these characters. I'm getting to like them. And I have no idea what's going to happen to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of these characters become footnotes in these histories, right? So it's interesting to see. You can tell by a lot of these portions at the top of each chapter, at least a couple people who might make it, and a few people who definitely don't make it, but we don't know the details or when exactly. That's the other thing. It's like we don't have really a semblance of years. We know that Dune takes place about 20,000 years in our future. Tigeron feels intrigue. I like that. Robert Fisher says, key moment for me was Paul's play or fight with Gurney. I thought that his inner dialogue was really interesting. Oh yeah, like is he really doing this? Like, is he gonna fucking kill me? I love Gurney for that reason, right? That whole fight is just like, it's like, you don't get to be ready. Like you have to always be ready. And like Gurney's like fury at that moment was just like, he's like, how dare you ever let down your guard, and you must always be ready to defend yourself. Robert Fisher, is he for real? Is he for true? Amber says, one thing I do like about how the book is written is that it read like a script. Each chapter is a new scene instead of multiple scenes per chapter or a lot of jumping around. Agreed. I love those breaks. I love where they stop. And scene is a great way to put it, I think, Amber. That's awesome. Because, yeah, it really does. It's very cinematic in how it's told. And we've had our first sort of chapter overlap between chapters 9 and 10, which was Paul getting the assassination attempt on Paul. Because the next chapter starts with Jessica, and then it leads into those moments where she's like, oh, Paul is 5 rooms down, he's over there. So those moments you now know happen at the exact same time, and it's done in a very, very clean way, I think.
Oh, that was, by the way, a big surprise for me that I'd never I wasn't aware till just like a week ago that Dune is Earth, that is here, that it's just, I'm used to the, far away, long time ago. I didn't realize that it was Earth and it was us humans. I thought it was like some other galaxy, some other thing. I didn't realize
kind of Battlestar-y in that respect.
Yeah.
So we have sense because of the spice and of the long life and how it allows us to fold space and do space travel and all that shit. So it's just us populating the fucking galaxy, galaxy universe. I don't actually remember if we're all in one galaxy or not. I'm assuming it's a galaxy. But yeah, we're everywhere. Humans have populated everywhere, and the Bene Gesserit are obsessed with the survival of the human species. That is something that is mentioned, I think, at the top of one of the chapters. Like, their purpose is to make sure that humans are okay. And their definition of human is very harsh, so it's hard to tell if that's a good thing or not, which I also think is super cool. And he says, gotta go teach. Hope this always ends up on my lunch break. Yeah, it should be this time every week.
Yeah. Bye, Mezzy.
Miss Priscilla says, it's also a future for Earth humans where evil machine uprising already happened. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why some of these things are a little mechanically backwards, is because the machines got too smart. So they put them down, basically. And there's the machine planet of Ix, which I think, oh gosh, my memory is failing me. They mention Ix. But yeah, that's like the machine planet. And
so any machines that they use or rely on are non-intelligent machines, like non-computer.
Right, which is why we have Mentats. Mentats have been trained to replace the thinking machines. So their whole rigorous training is basically, it's like, yeah, we're going to be better than that, because it's like, I'm a person. I'm not going to rise up against you. I'm very loyal. Loyalty is like a huge theme through all of Dune. And as much as it is a powerful tool as any of those other things, like loyalty is like super powerful here.
You guys, there's a video of I watched a couple months ago of doing AI experimentation where they gave a computer, they gave it like a little simple body, gave it arms, gave it legs, but didn't teach it how to walk or how to move. And they said, get this thing from here to here. And over a period of time, it taught the little character to walk and take steps. So the machine itself learned to walk and figure out how to walk and jump over its obstacles. It was really cool. It's like a little scary, and that like what computers will eventually be able to think and figure out by themselves.
Super terrifying. Super terrifying. I love it though. I'm about it. Give me the machines. Let me see. Here's my look at chapter summaries and see if we glossed over anything important.
Think so.
Talk about Duncan. Wait a minute. These aren't the right chapters. That's not the right book. Somebody's little study guide is wrong. So other weird thing to mention. So Dune is sliced into 3 smaller books within its volume. It doesn't do the best job of pointing that out at the top unless you look at the table of contents. But so there'll be like 3 major shifts of this story. Let's see. Talk about the Gom Jabbar. We've mentioned the Kwisatz Haderach. We don't know much about that. The Fremen are referred to as the Will of the Sand people, which I think is just super cute. Will of the Wisp. Let's see. Weird Judge says, they're not terrifying. They just want a hug. They can't feel hugs, so they use laser blasters to replace the hug part. But hugs! Hey, what's that link? Oh, is that the robot?
Yep. Well, this is the CG AI. There's also apparently some robot stuff that's done the similar.
With the wild flailing for balance.
Yeah. You'll learn to walk.
Terrifying. Terrifying. Aha! All right, so History lessons all over the place. I feel like that's mostly everything. But I'd love anyone in the chat, if you guys have specific insights or things that you really loved, really hated, anything along those lines, I want to hear it, because I have my own experience already. I want to know what everybody else's is. That's more or less the purpose of this show.
And while we're like kind of starting to wrap that up,
Yeah.
do we want to make predictions of what we think is going to happen next? Or
I resign myself from doing that, but please do. Actually, no, I'd love to know predictions. Like, what do y'all think is going to happen given the information that you have? Because you know some things are going to happen, but you don't know how they're going to happen.
I feel like Dr. Yue is gonna end sadly.
Yeah, nothing about Yue seems that it's going to go well for him ever. Like, he's just
Things are gonna be sad.
Yeah. And definitely, like, Leto, like, it's been said so many times that Leto is gonna die. It's just like, I'm waiting for it. It's gonna happen. And
There's so many good lines in this book. I'm flipping through my highlighted moments.
I feel like the all-out war between the Harkonnens and the Atreides is going to happen sooner than I'm imagining it to happen in the book. Like, so I know obviously that it's going to happen. It's just like the movie definitely lets it happen later than the way that it's kind of ramping up already. At least the way I've been reading it.
Amber says, I think that Paul is going to have to fight the little douche kid, the one with suspended man. That's interesting, right? Because he's the only other character in Paul's age group.
That's true.
So it's like they as a device, you can tell that it's like, here's your foil, thunk. We found him. Weird Jed says, I think the kid, Paul Atreides, is going to do drugs. Everyone's already doing these drugs, by the way. Pretty much everyone's partaking of the spice. Actually, I don't know if Paul has yet, because he's still a kid. But I also enjoyed that there's that moment where they talk about, like, how did it taste for you the first time? Because the taste of spice adapts to your body, so it's always like a new experience. So the first time Jessica had it, she says it tasted of cinnamon, but it's going to be different for different people, which is also kind of interesting. Robert Fisher says, I have a question about the blue eyes. Ask away. Yes. Beautiful. A great Gurney Halleck line, which is just in his head. He's thinking Halleck got sad for something, and I just love the line, I'm infected by mood. Feel that, man. I feel that. Is it regular spice use that turns the eyes blue, or is it genetic trace passed down? It is regular and like a lot of spice. So you have to take a bunch of spice for your eyes to start to get stained blue. Like,
is it individual?
High doses.
Is it individual, or is it because their people have been using it for so long?
No, so it's not genetic. It is you as an individual. However much spice you take, that will inform how blue your eyes get and how regularly. Dapper Piglet says, I thought spice was always tasted like cinnamon. Didn't know it changed for each person. Well, I don't know how much it alters. I want to find that line, because that was I noticed it for the first time this time, because I also remember keying into cinnamon. And they mentioned cinnamon flavor later. Spoilers, this doesn't matter. But they mentioned it tastes like cinnamon in other places as well.
It mentioned something about it changing to each person, or...
Yeah, I think that was chapter 9. Let me see. Yep.
Robert says, like red eyes for cannabis. Nice.
But imagine them never going away and just getting redder. How fucking terrible. Just red on red. No whites, just solid. Special climate, yellow sun. Wait, that's too soon. Dang it. Where is that moment? Oh yeah, so one other thing. Jessica is now in possession of that Chris knife. So having passed the Shadow Mapes test,
oh, that's right.
She now has the Chris knife in her bodice. So she's got it with her on her person now.
And she scratched old lady with it.
So that it wouldn't decompose.
Yeah, and she coagulated quickly was like another thing.
Oh, that's right, because they said that like
that was an adaptation.
Adaptation that their body would immediately coagulate to not lose moisture. That's cool.
All right. Dang it! I really want to know. Is it? Spice.
Spice.
Ah. Can you remember your first taste of spice? Asks Dr. Yui. Jessica says, it tasted like cinnamon, but never twice the same, he said. It's like life. It presents a different face each time you take it. Some hold that the spice produces a learned flavor reaction. The body, learning a thing, is good for it, interprets the flavor as pleasurable, slightly euphoric, and, like life, never to be truly synthesized. So they hammer in over and over again. Spice only happens here. There is no other place. There's no other option. But yeah, and I think that's also a very drug-like description, right? I think it's like, or like coffee, for instance, like it's bitter, but then eventually like you really enjoy it. So your body starts being trained to want it and crave it, or nicotine, I would assume. I don't smoke, but along those lines of addictive drugs. Spice is pretty addictive. Once you start taking it, I believe you cannot stop, like you're not allowed. Something like that. But yeah, man, I can't wait. Yeah, we're still very much at like the beginning footholds of this story. So I think this is probably good. I think.
What's the homework for next week?
Homework for next week is going to be to read the next 5 chapters. So let me get to what that quote is, because again, not numbered.
Would you be? I was going to ask you a favor. In the Discord, would it be possible for you to do like chapter 9 and then give us the first couple words of each chapter so we can follow along to know where we are?
Of every single one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that. I would make that
just because like sometimes we say like, oh, I'm in chapter 8 and I wouldn't know where exactly I was.
Got it.
Just be help.
Let me. Oh no! Wrong button. Slow little Kindle. Everyone's deciding what their spice would taste like. I think they're also stating it would initially taste like cinnamon, and then it starts to taste like other things. It tastes like kind of what you need. That little druggy itch. So let me see what 15 starts with. Hopefully, if it's too spoilery, I won't. Okay, so chapter 15 starts with another segment from the Princess Irulan. So all those segments are from different like histories, books, sayings, proverbs, whatever, from all over this universe. This one is from the Princess Irulan and starts with, my father, the Padishah Empire, took me by the hand one day, and I sensed in the ways my mother had taught me that he was disturbed. And that's about as far as I would type in the chat so that we don't give anything away. Because some of these will give shit away. Like,
I mean, you literally, you could even type the first like 4 words just so for reference. We don't even know exactly what it says.
Sure.
That would be.
Yeah, sure.
Especially like on the Kindle, because I have to go tap to find the next chapter. There's no chapters.
True. That's a good point.
All right.
Then caramel. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Yay, Dune Book Club. I'll have more formative questions next time. I think now that I know how this is flowing.
Yeah. Well, and especially as we get more chapters and chapters, we can always refer back. So like, even though we're only have 5 chapters for next week, we'll probably end up talking about stuff that happened in the first 10 chapters or where, and we can keep stretching the conversation.
Yeah. And for those of you who have copies, like hard copies of the book at home, I know this is blasphemy, but like I encourage you to like dog ear, postmark, do whatever. Like find your favorite moments or moments that you think really mean something and tag those for yourself. However you feel comfortable doing that with your own book. Like I used to always just like cram tissue paper into pages that I like, but like I know my sister just highlights, writes in the margins, does whatever.
Pencil.
Yeah, pencil. So I go through like my Kindle and I'll highlight bits that I'm like, oh, I think that's important. But that way, so we're all collectively coming together with stuff that stands out to us as individuals, because I know stuff interested me that other people didn't catch, and stuff interested you guys that other people didn't catch. And that's what this is about. Discussion.
Cool. So we'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. with Roll for Initiative.
Yeah.
7:30 is all Pacific time. Trash Your Base Theater is back. So
yeah.
That's tomorrow. You want to raid anybody, Ryan?
Let's do it.
So yeah, we are gonna raid our friend Grandudius, and the subject for tomorrow is gonna be, what is the most Halloweeny item?
most Halloween edit.
All right, y'all. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow too.
Bye.
Oh.